We're gonna go ahead and get started. Kimberly, can you take roll, please? Here.
Here.
Secretary Annette Campbell.
Here.
Treasurer George Seifert.
Yeah.
Trustee Lisa Middleton.
Here.
Trustee Carrie Nicholson.
Here.
Trustee Larry Williams.
Here.
Okay, we will take a moment for customary moment of silence. Okay. And now will you lead us in prayer?
I don't have to sing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Can I entertain a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Members of the audience may address the board on agenda items only. So you got anything?
He was going to talk about school lunches, but that's not on the agenda. So.
No. Okay. So I'll take it out.
You can make that comment later.
Seeing none, we will move on to board topics. A, commencement day high school proposal.
Yes, I'm going to invite Greg Tatro to come up and present his the rationale behind this recommendation. Because of timing and so forth, it's important for us to move on this. So let's have that presentation and dialogue. Greg?
Thank you. Our proposal is to move graduation from where it's currently on a Saturday evening at 7 p.m. to Sunday at 3 p.m. mid-afternoon. Our rationale is over the years, many of our student athletes, and you've seen, you have this, the thing I have in front of, the sheet in front of me. We have often on a Saturday, we have a great amount of conflict dealing with graduation. Just this year, if graduation is held on the Saturday, we have the girls' tennis finals, baseball districts, and softball districts, of which our teams will be playing that day. And it's almost like an all-day tournament, and it could go into the evening. Golf regionals are that day, and girls' soccer districts, which we will be playing that day. So it creates a lot of angst for athletes and families to try to get to those events and then hurry back. Sometimes, like for baseball and softball, you don't know. You win, you advance. So you'll play the same day. So it's like this catch-22. We got to get back for graduation, but we want to win, you know. So it creates a lot of angst for families and for kids. Oftentimes, kids can't participate in practice for graduation because they're gone. So they don't get to do that part of it. So they miss out on that part. Sometimes they're missing the parade. We've had kids run in and their uniform is on underneath their gown. So it becomes a point of contention. So we thought about this. We've been talking about it on and off, and what are some options for us. And we talked about, one of our topics was, well, then what do we do with Grad Bash? Well, Grad Bash is customarily been done after graduation. It's a lock-in in Kalamazoo. So they take all the kids to Kalamazoo and they kind of lock them in for the night. Kind of a safe place. So the big question was, what do we do with Grad Bash? Well, one of our big senior events is Class Night. Class Night is an event generally held on a Friday or Saturday night, and there's nothing for students to do after that. So oftentimes that becomes like there are some dangerous behaviors going on that night. And we said that would be a great time for Grad Bash. It would be after Class Night. Most seniors are there. We take that option away so that they have a safe choice to go take care of some things and have some fun. But you can see some of the bullet points down at the bottom. It opens up. Right now, Saturday is generally a day that you really don't have an open house because you've got practice, you've got a parade, you've got graduation, and then Grad Bash that evening. So it's kind of wipes that whole day out. On a Sunday, you still would have a chance to have a get-together after graduation. in that evening. The second bullet part about rain showers, it seems that time of the year, we tend to have rain and then it'll clear up at graduation.
I was wondering what kind of research you did on that.
This was a Google. Many people brought that up to me and I said, I'm not comfortable putting that in, but somebody put it in there for me today. We talk about the conflicts. 3 o'clock start time allows for open houses before and after, and with along, as well as the traditional. We can have our graduation practice on our senior checkout day, so all students will be able to participate because they'll be there for that. Our staff we polled our staff in the spring and they were in favor of this move. Informally polling parents, as you know, as you may or may not know, my daughter's a senior this year, so I was able to ask some of their friends and their parents and find out what they had, and I did not have anyone say that they disagreed with it. But again, informal. Our entire admin team is in favor, including the senior advisors. And then we talk a little bit about the grad bash. And class night is the Friday before Memorial Day, and there's no conflicts that day. We will then, hopefully, we can get grad bash organized for that night. So that is our proposal for you.
So how does this work, Randy? Is this a board decision, or is it just feedback from us, or how does that work exactly?
Technically, it doesn't go up to the level of board decision, but it should be there because you guys represent the community, and I think your decision on this would be very supportive, one way or the other. So, Greg, have you thought about doing a more like a formal survey or a survey monkey or Google survey out to your parents, your senior parents?
Was it considered? Yeah, but was it, we can do that.
So here's the concern I have that I don't see quite addressed in here. Now that we have a broader, larger district and we're serving two very distinct communities, I would want to make sure that Sunday. Now I know that there's been historically events that have scheduled through schools on Sundays over in Albion, but Sunday Sunday and Wednesdays are pretty significant. Sunday's very significant because church going and then sometimes breaks and then sometimes church going again in the afternoon or evening. I've talked to a couple folks over in Albion who have said, well, if it's long enough lead time, they can, usually the churches will be willing to accommodate, but we haven't really reached out to the churches and asked that question yet.
And that was our consideration, was when we talked about this, is getting this done as quick in front of you guys as quickly as possible so that we could get the lead time, because it's graduation and it's a big day for everybody, and I think people are willing to accommodate if they know far enough ahead of time. So that was our consideration as far as that went. It didn't reach as far as city limit signs or anything. It was about generally people, if they know far enough ahead, they'll make the adjustment.
I think, Greg, it sounds like a lot of thought's gone into trying to cover everything and think of all the, the benefits and stuff. And then my only other comment is not only church, but just other community events that might be on that Sunday. So maybe checking with the city or checking with the community, both here in Marshall and Albion, to see if there's any really big city events that happen on that Sunday, to make sure that we're not in conflict with something else.
Yeah, they're currently on the community calendars.
Right, not just churches, which is a good thought too, but any other community event that might be on that day.
Because obviously communicating this as quick as possible would be helpful for other people planning as well.
Does this eliminate sports conflicts?
Correct.
There's nothing on for sports on Sunday?
Nothing on Sunday.
I would probably put something on Facebook and just say, we're talking about doing this, see any issues with it. I don't see any problem at all, and I think you've done your homework and done a nice job with it. I mean, if you guys want to do it through the high school Facebook page, maybe that would be a more appropriate place to do it. But I just watched, I think in the spring, somebody put on Facebook about changing the Christmas parade, which I also thought was a no-brainer, and I saw 450 comments about why we shouldn't change it. It's the things that we don't think of.
Right.
Well, I guess that, so, Randy suggested a survey.
A survey would
Facebook
serve
and
the same purpose.
Facebook and the survey are really two totally different things, because the survey would be to go right to a targeted audience of graduating, families of graduating seniors. Because I think what you're looking for the board right now is any recommendations.
Yeah.
We're not taking any action tonight. It just what would make us comfortable enough to make a decision. So, Facebook can get crazy sometimes.
Really?
And, yeah, so as you're well aware.
I can give you
So
some examples.
would we
of it.
rather have a survey of the families that would primarily be impacted?
I mean, you could do a survey of like maybe juniors and seniors, parents of juniors and seniors, and if that was 60% or more, I think I think it's going to be 80% in support of it.
If
I
you
think
do a
something like
survey,
that.
make sure you post the rationale for the change.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And just simply say, would you be in favor, yes or no?
Does Survey Monkey cost anything?
No, this can go out to emails, quite frankly. We can just do the group mass emails.
Yeah, I would.
Rhonda
do
does
that.
the information blast.
No, from a
From
coaching
high school.
standpoint, this is right on, because I used to coach track, and it was a nightmare between getting kids back and forth to participate in the track meet and be back for graduation. So this is right on. I would say that most churches in Albion, by 1:30, they're out.
Okay. Good to know.
So that'd be 10.
Now, I personally put my wife and myself in peril coming from Lansing back from the soccer games, girls' soccer games, to get back in time for commencement and the other stuff. So that, if I'm willing to do that, I know that kids will probably push the envelope on that and so forth. So I'm sure we thankfully had no major safety issues. But on the other hand, they're out of breath and they're just remember that
They're not enjoying it
Yeah.
because
No,
they've
not.
got I've been there, so
it's really difficult.
it makes sense to me.
And there were other schools I know in the county that have it on Sunday. I remember on Facebook. I don't remember which
I'm
one.
sure I could. I mean, yeah.
There's a couple of these.
There's
There's
always-
a couple that
always a
have theirs on a
local-
weeknight, like Friday
Yeah.
night is a big night for.
It's always a local decision.
Mhm.
Can this be made as simple as if Greg sends out that Survey Monkey and we say that like it gets majority or a number like 60% that he can then proceed, so they don't have to wait another couple of weeks?
Yes, absolutely. And
Yeah, that's
I'm
what I'm
getting the
Can we give him
sense
that direction so he
Am I
can keep
getting the
moving?
sense that the majority or consensus would be, let's explore this, and if you don't have any big roadblocks, then go ahead.
Yes.
I think the biggest thing is just to get it on the calendar.
Yep, outstanding. So our number is 60% or greater, and I'll share that with you guys as well.
If it's like 59.9, go ahead with
And
it.
don't worry about the number, just set up the framework and the rationale, and then ask the simple questions, you support going to this.
Sure, absolutely. Cool. Thank you, guys.
Now, just to clarify, we're not talking just for this year though?
No,
This is gonna be the new norm?
Correct.
Okay, just wanna make sure.
unless it was a fiasco.
Right, unless it didn't work, but I mean, the rationale is not just unique to this year, it's an ongoing, you've had
Yes.
this issue in the past, we would continue to have this issue, so this is the new tradition is Sunday would be the.
Yes.
Perfect.
I know when I see the data on the weather from the National Aeronautical Notes.
I want to see that.
Farmers Almanac.
George, I'm gonna go home right now and start that research.
If had Greg been wired into that earlier, we would have had outdoor graduations many times.
By the way, nice job with the
Anytime.
homecoming parade. It just cleared right off.
Thank you, thank you. We had an issue though, and it's funny because you had the magnet, and of course the magnet sticks on your vehicle.
Right. Unless you leave it on your garage for the.
Boshears Ford allowed us to borrow 6 brand new Ford F-150s. Beautiful trucks. It was fantastic. Super, just fantastic for Dave to do that. Go to stick a magnet on there, doesn't stick. They're all aluminum. Oops.
Good old fashioned American steel. You gotta use the older car.
Yeah, just use duct tape.
No, I did not. Now where was I gonna?
Nice.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, we're gonna move to school advanced superintendent board process.
Yeah, I just want to give you an update of where we're at. In front of you, you have the School Advanced District Leader Framework for Dr. Davis for the 17-18. Remember, it was from our training, I was asked to go ahead and identify characteristics within the other domains 2 through 5. Somewhere in the range of 10 or 11. I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
There's 9.
I have 10, and then I have the 2 required goals. So I have 12 altogether.
The top ones.
I reflected on that from my rubric, the formative rubric, in areas that I think that I could need, either areas of need or areas of interest that I have to move forward with that in the development plan. Next thing will be couching these characteristics within the 3 overarching goals or objectives that we have established for the district. I wanted you to know also I talked with the leadership team about the building and program administrators instrument, and they have to do the same thing. They get like 8 or 9, I think, on top of the performance goals. They're different as far as a framework than the district leadership. And so I was, in the conversation, they said, since we're gonna be rolling this out over 3 years and eventually getting all of the characteristics covered, and you know the direction you wanna go this year, why don't you go ahead and pick the characteristics for us as a team? And that made some sense. I mean, I could have gone either way of having them individually do that or not. I think for our central office, I'm gonna have them review it and either embrace these characteristics or choose something else that they may decide they really wanna do. But for the principals team, they had consensus and asked me to go ahead and do that. So I created those, sent those out to them. Their next step is to take their formative rubric and go through that process of looking at these characteristics and start anticipating where the evidence is going to be and presented, what kind of evidence and so forth under these areas, and what their initiatives are going to be at their building level. We're also going to set up a Google file for each individual administrator that the administrator and I can go in and have authority to change and look at. And that way it'll be a depository throughout the year as we go through about these processes that'll be in place. Okay. I may do that with the board too, so the board keeps updated on how that's flowing. And then in open session, as you requested, once every 2 months we could do an uptick on that, or if there's something just kind of like coming out. I mean, I can envision us having a academic highlight or a special presentation or something that can help illustrate a particular area that I'm focused on what I'm looking at. Okay, like in particular, Reading Now Network is immediately come to mind. Okay, and I'll try to coach you on those processes so you'll have evidence behind that, and like we talked about in training, no real surprises. You should have that stuff right in front of you, and you can move through that. And I think it's better that way also because you can have opportunities to ask questions and get clarification along the way, so we don't have to spend a whole lot of final meeting on that.
So this is separate from what you're talking about there, but one of the pieces that we talked about during this time was board self-evaluation.
Yes.
And that I think she identified that there are tools out there at no cost.
There are.
Is that something you and I can pursue?
Yeah, we can do that. I just, quite frankly, haven't had the time.
Yeah, I just don't want to lose sight of it, so if you and I can just.
No, I appreciate that.
Okay.
And I like the idea also of board education, just if we're gonna do 10, 15 minutes in a board meeting once a quarter maybe or something.
That's coming.
Yeah.
Next agenda.
Perfect.
Does anybody have any questions for me?
I like it.
So you chose these, right? These are ones you picked out of the available options.
That came off of this, correct?
Yes, the framework, yep.
So are we gonna vote on this at some point, or is this your presentation to us?
No, this is my choice about those.
Okay.
And what I do is help you see how they tie into the 3 overarching goals we're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
And what are my deliverables and how do we measure it? So when we start talking about interventions and things like that, I'll put a lot more meat to this. So you can see under this particular area, it's gonna be this, this, and this.
So part of what we talked about when we met and when we had the discussion before is that if there's something else that we're concerned that you're not doing, or we hear the parent or the teacher or the other concern, this is what we're gonna review you on, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we can certainly talk to you about that and raise those issues, but we're not
As
reviewing your job performance based on that.
No, it's gonna be on these things and the overarching goals and accomplishments.
And same for the administrators too,
Yes.
correct?
Right, so
Yeah,
it'll
'cause
flow down.
They're like
Yeah.
30, and I said, no, 29 actually. And we said, no, we're gonna focus, and then we'll roll over next year to include 9 more, and then we'll roll over again and include 10 or 11. Okay.
I'd just like to thank everybody for attending last week. I thought we had some great discussion, and it was great to see and take the next step to improving your evaluation tool on that. So it was great.
And it feeds down through the whole process.
Yeah, that's very good.
It even elevates a lot more what we do in the teacher evaluations and the feedback and the data that we're gleaning from that, because it actually then directly ties into, did you do your evaluations, et cetera. That's what I ask a lot of times, and I get evidence behind it and how intricate their evaluations are, but I don't see the data per se. You know, how many of your teachers met the growth goals for the year, and how do they contribute back to your overall rating for them in these performance areas. And so that data is going to be free flowing, and we're going to have a really a good focus discussion. Looking forward to it. We're all learning though, so we're all kind of like, how's this going to go? But you know, it was a good upfront investment. So.
Absolutely.
This definitely seems more progressive and evolving and evidence-based, and I think it's a great way to go.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. Good. Anything else?
So we'll move to flow of future board meetings.
Okay. So in that meeting, when we talked a little bit about the flow of the meeting, in your packet under 4C, you have an example of how the board meeting could flow with changes based on some of the things we talked about earlier. And if you look at your current agenda, we can go through this process. What we're suggesting is opening the meeting, the normal process all the way through the pledge, approval of the agenda, members of the audience to address board agenda items only, academic highlights when we have them, and then the consent agenda up front. Roll through the consent agenda, make the approval, go to the report of the superintendent. Then the next thing would be any discussion items. Number 8 would be action items. Then we'd have board professional development, which would be 10 to 15 minute presentation or dialogue or whatever we bring to you on that.
Apologize, I didn't scroll down that far in the back.
Yeah. And then public comment on anything, board member comments to close, in which no action could take, and then adjournment. So what we're doing is just taking the consent agenda and putting that up front, getting that out of the way, and then just moving through what feels like a better process, because we're doing report discussion, action items, and then into some professional development.
Yeah, looks good.
A discussion is on anything previously in the board meeting, or do we have that?
Now, we bring discussion items forward. So
Okay.
School advance is a discussion item. And that's when we put those discussion items down there. If you have an idea from the agenda that you would like to add as a discussion item, you can talk to Bill, and Bill can talk with us, and we can get that on the agenda, which has happened in the past. Any concerns about the flow?
Oh, I think it works well.
And I've served on other boards that have the consent agenda up front, have a similar flow, so this makes sense.
Yeah. So that means you guys just read the background and stuff when you get, before you get here, and we just kind of go through that. And then we can get into the meat of the meeting.
Sounds good.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to student directory information.
I had a concerned parent come to us. It really sparked over the conversations about senior prank day, the beginning of the school year, and primarily about the way we handled. Generally, the senior prank thing was with chalk, and they paint up their parking spaces that they call their own, and all that kind of stuff. And it's usually very pro-senior and not exclusionary and so forth. Well, there was a couple messages this time around that seemed to be exclusionary. In fact, you all contacted me on some of those things, and I went out from my home and looked at it at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and agreed that when whoever made those comments, and it was, we did have video cameras in place like we do in that entranceway, but the nighttime drainage was not all that great. You really couldn't use it for any substantial way of determining who was directly responsible. So in the conversation, I said to the principal, I'd like the senior class to address this and get it taken care of, because we're not trying to be exclusionary. We don't want to have messages out there that even though it's usually tongue-in-cheek, some incoming kids to our district won't understand that, and some that are already here won't understand that. So I asked them to get it taken care of. We had a conversation and expected or intended that to be a voluntary request. The parent raised question that maybe it wasn't for their child, and as we looked at, and I did a review with the principal, as we looked at the way the communication went, that could be possible. That some kids said, "Hey, we got to go out there and clean the mess up." The intent was to make it voluntary, and there were some seniors that said, "No, I had nothing to do with it. I'm not going to miss class and go out and do that." The intent also is to put the onus on the class officers and class leaders in the senior class. Make a comment about, "Hey guys, you can do better than this. Let's don't down somebody to make us feel a little bit more important. You can go ahead and talk about senior power and all those kind of things, but please don't target a particular group coming in or a particular class." So in that discussion, we talked. The principal talked to a couple leaders and a couple seniors that he knew were present, and just said, "Can you round up some people and get out there and help us clean this up?" There was a parent that took exception to that, thinking that it should have been disciplinary. It should have been following the rules or the policies that we have on due process and investigation, identifying who was specifically responsible for it and then holding them accountable. Could have gone that way, but I also give latitude to my building administrators to create or establish climate and culture in their buildings. And policies are policies of the board. They are also roadmaps for my administrators to address and to contact me if we feel like we're going against policy. When you have something like this, which is a general action, we thought the better course of action was to make it a teachable moment, ask the kids to go out and demonstrate, senior camaraderie, and try to correct any misgivings that might have been created there. In the process, though, we had 2 video tapes, one of the evening time when it occurred, and the next day in the morning time, which the light was better, where our students came out and were cleaning up in front. And we were FOIA'd for that. And I declined the FOIA. And I declined the FOIA initially because 2 things. One, FERPA comes to mind for me that we should, I guess my knee-jerk reaction is I need to protect the anonymity and confidentiality of our students, that this was not a disciplinary action, so where's the public good? Because it says in the language that I can consider public good. But I got a learning on that last week with Truan because I talked to our legal counsel and said to my favorite counsel, no offense, Roy, if he's here. And she said, she said she understands where I'm coming from because there are some folks that I've met along the way in my 15 years as a superintendent who may ask or FOIA a general video and then use that video evidence or as evidence or conjecture about other things that they have in their minds that have been going on with their kids. And I think I would rather err on the fact that if it's not in public interest, why are we releasing it? However, the law clearly states that FERPA doesn't apply in this circumstance unless the videotape were used for disciplinary action. And when it becomes useful in disciplinary action, you're actually viewing the videotapes, you're actually using that as part of the student record. That videotape becomes part of the student record. Once it becomes part of the student record, it falls under FERPA. And it indicates that the parents have a right to look at the video of the guardians or parents of the children that we're concerned about relative to discipline, but they can only do that in the presence of administration, and they cannot take ownership of that video. You follow that? That's a little bit different sometimes than what we practice along the way. And so I've talked to my principals and said, guys and ladies, here's the situation. If we have a videotape that we're looking at disciplinary action on, then the guardians have a right to sit there and view that, and we don't have to go through the process of blocking out a face or things like that. They have a right to look at it. They just don't have a right to own it, okay? If it's not being used for purposes of discipline, the videotape, and it's just a general videotape, which we take all the time in our parking lots or during football games or whatever, imagine the analogy that if I was a sports writer and I called up and said I'd like a videotape of that football game in the crowd, and we would need to release it because there's no reason why we wouldn't. It's not discipline, so therefore the video is not part of the student record. So what they said was, or what Truan counseled me on was, if it's not part of the student record, therefore you must release if the purpose is justified, et cetera, they have reason for that. And so I had to release both of those videos of those that evening and that morning time video. Even though there are children on that or students on that are in that group and they're obviously no longer protected of anonymity, they had no assurances of privacy to begin with. So when you're in a group, you have no assurance of privacy. When you're in the hallway, you have no assurance of privacy. When you're in the buildings, you have no assurance of privacy. It's a public school. So with that, I released the 2 videotapes for the FOIA, which brings me then to directory information.
Randy, just a question on that.
Sure.
So what's the difference between that and then the kids that you can't take pictures of, like because they're foster kids or other things like that? Are those kids blacked out, or is it because they're in a group and this is FOIA that then people can see their pictures?
Yeah, it's generally because they're in a group and no assurance of privacy, and we do abide by that release, whether they have a publicity release, and we do abide by other avenues within the directory information I'm going to share with you, where parents can say, I want to opt out and I don't want to have that information shared, including pictures. They have a right to do that. They have an opportunity to do that in the window at the beginning of the school year. But when you have general group pictures and so forth, usually the press don't single in on an individual child. If they do and make that a point of the article or whatever, then you have to make sure that there is very clear approval for release. But if it's a groups setting, generally group setting, where they don't focus on the kids, it's basically no expectation of privacy.
And can anybody get it for any reason, like if I just wanted to see what was happening on Friday at hearings?
You know,
Just-
that becomes a question of whether, it's for, I mean, they have to state their reasons why, it's gotta be a fairly valid reason why they're looking at that. It's gotta be a legitimate request, it's gotta meet the requirements for FOIA. We hope that we're not gonna get inundated with this, but this is the downside of having video streamed. And the downside is, if it's general video, people can request it. If we get a lot of these requests, it would certainly overwhelm our system. But I'm hoping it stays within reasonable limits on that. That's a good question. We're worried a little bit about that.
And the reason that this one is released is because it has to do with, they're looking at whether we're following policy.
That primarily, and also their interest in their child, the involvement in that incident, or their involvement in the cleanup the next day. So with that, it's actually a legitimate request from a parent of a child that's in our district.
But why would they then want the video from the night before their child was involved?
Same issue. They wanted to see whether that showed any evidence of who was engaged or who was involved or what was going on with that. But because it wasn't disciplinary, it was public record.
I was a FOIA officer for the county for 7 years, so I'll share some stories with you about lots of interesting things that came across the sheriff's desk. So.
Yeah. So it brought up questions about the directory, and this individual raised it early on. I didn't quite understand really where that was coming from, but on your desk you have a packet that starts with our policy 8330, student records. So let me just walk you through my understanding of this and why it came up for question. If you go to the second page, the third page of this document for our policy, which you've adopted, and it was adopted in 2014, there have been some focus and change legislatively about directory information. We know that Neola is addressing those things, and we believe that in the last batch we went through, which was pretty thick, of Neola policies, that may be sitting there waiting for this final process to come back, but I can't guarantee you that. But under directory information, in the first paragraph or sentence, it says, each year the superintendent shall provide public notice to students and their parents of its intent to make available upon request certain information known as directory information. Then it goes on to define what directory information is, and it talks about student's name, address, telephone number, date and place of birth, participation in officially recognized activities or sports, including height and weight of a member of an athletic team, dates of attendance, date of graduation, awards received, honor rolls, scholarships, etc. And then it goes down to talk about armed forces. So the reason why I brought that to your attention is because the comment, provide public notice. How we do public notice in Marshall, which meets the requirements of public notice, is that we communicate via a form that's in your packet called Notice for Directory Information, and that goes into the every registered student and their guardian get a copy of that. And then we also put it in the handbook, which herein lies part of the problem I saw was confusing. The individual thought that you should have read the directory information and thought you should have read the use for the directory information. And it's actually not required to read out loud. However, in the high school handbook and in the Opportunity High School handbook, they have the words, if you go to the thing that starts with computers up top, if you see that bracketed sentence, all items to be used in the directory information are read at a public Board of Education meeting. So that was not new. That was something that's been in the language and narrative for a while, and you know how sometimes we overlook those things, so I'll take responsibility for overlooking that. That should have been taken out. I don't even know if it applied in earlier stages before me, but that's not what we mean by public notice. It's not read in the public meeting. It could be, I mean, it's no big deal, except it's one more detail that you have to adhere to if we chose to do it that way in the handbook. In my view, we manage it through our notice of directory information. We also, along with this, we give everyone at the registration packet a form, or we make them known that there is a form for them to opt out, and they have a particular time frame in which to do that. And then we abide by those things according to student record. Okay. Photographs are in there in directory information, the handbook. And if you look at the reasons in the handbook, we talk about we do the release of these for athletic eligibility, job applications, and college entrance. We use these for other professional reasons, and including including the requirements that we have from ESEA, which has to do with making sure that we allow at least the names, addresses, and telephone listings are provided to the military for recruitment purposes for all 11th graders. We have a list of things about the reason for the for photograph and other information is internal, or it becomes external because it goes to the public. Playbills showing the students' role in drama production, the annual yearbook, the honor roll, and other recognition lists that we like to publicize with the service organizations, graduation programs, and sports activity sheets. You know, so, and also class rings and yearbooks for purchasing. We do not sell our list or information to anyone. We also do not release any things that are beyond the pale of directory information, like social security numbers and so forth. Okay. But it was a good refresher for me to take a look at and try to figure out, well, why is that? And he's right. That language is in the yearbook, so I'm going to let you know it won't be in there next year. It's too late to recover that for this year. But I think we're acting in strong intention and alignment with what we're trying to accomplish with the schools.
Hey Randy, just another, this is the one that was in the student handbooks.
Yes.
This one says by September 30th, but this one says by September 5th. So maybe just coordinating the dates.
One on September 30th has to do with announcing or making sure that that's available for people, I believe.
Okay.
And the other one has to do with when they want the form back to be able to have it documented, but let me double check.
Okay.
Are we covered for this year? Have we read this at a board meeting yet?
Well, I just did, basically.
Okay, good. That's no question.
But on the, but on the other hand, that it wasn't our intention or my expectation that we would be doing that.
Right.
Because if we took those little snippets out of all the handbooks, we would be, and we make the handbooks, the changes and improvements, we make those available, and they sit in in Kimberly's area for people to review if they need to review it.
No, I just want to make sure we at least have, now that we're aware of it, we consider it read.
I believe I just did based on reading the directory information and letting people know about the process that we're in. But, good news about that is it was good for me to rethink through that process, and I gotta tell you, I'm a little surprised at the FOIA piece, but I understand it legally. I guess my knee-jerk reaction is to try to protect and make sure we don't create more confusion out there. And
do they have a right to release that publicly if they want to?
well, that's what I asked. I actually asked that question with our legal advisors about, well, what if a person takes that information and uses it in such a way that wasn't intended and it ended up becoming a problem for the individuals? And the response was, that's what we have laws for.
Yeah. There's a lot of latitude.
There's a lot of latitude.
Yeah.
There's a lot of latitude for them using that
Using
information.
it, yeah. And where you see it is in conflict, especially with minors. I mean, with adults, if you commit a crime, you're involved with the legal system, it's all basically public. But it's the minor piece is what, and that was what we had so much discussion about, having access to the video from Consolidated Dispatch, under what circumstances they would have access to in emergencies to be able to see that video.
And that is only during emergency circumstances.
And that's why it's so very closely limited, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of dialogue out there about, you know, how you shouldn't, you can't and you should not use video for purposes of disciplinary action of an employee based on their work habits and so forth. And because we have to have these for security. So, you know, you've got it, on the one hand, you have it for security. You're privy to whatever you see in the hallway, but you know, you have to be very cautious that if you're going to use it for student discipline, it becomes student record. If you're not using it for student discipline, you're not using it for anything else other than the general view of what was going on at the time, that becomes public.
The news stations and newspapers are really good about blocking out people's faces. It's people getting it and posting it on Facebook is the thing that worries me about it.
Yes, and I agree, because there's a lot of folks that don't want to, and I talked about social media, and there's acknowledgement that the world has changed a lot, even the last time this was looked at, which was March of 2017 by our legislature. So a couple other things that go on, you also have in your packet the law that indicates the Michigan, the school, what am I thinking, the school law, section 380.1136, they popularly known as Act 451 on directory information. The law now requires that if a parent is concerned or wants to know who we release this information to as far as directory information, we have a certain time frame and we have protocols we have to go through to announce who specifically, who the contact person was, the organization we release it to, and what was the rationale or purpose for release of that information. So parents can still ask and do a follow-up on whether or not their child's directory information was released and for what purpose.
Do we have people that buy the list from us of seniors to be able to send them information about? No. Okay.
Nope. I would never release that for that purpose. I don't know of any district that would ever do that. We've had inquiries.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be really great if I had a list of all the students and I could do this, this, and this and market my program. It's like, no, don't do that.
So if for some reason this person was able to determine who the people that did it on this video, based on this video, then we couldn't do anything with that information for disciplinary because then it is perfect. After, I mean, do you run into the thing where if
I think you really you already made a decision not to pursue discipline, right?
Yeah, we're not doing, I mean, there's not enough evidence even on, I mean, we've reviewed the tape, my administrators did, and they said, Randy, there's really nothing much on this. I reviewed the tapes, and there really isn't much on it, and there's no definitive action that we could take subject to what was on that video to say emphatically this individual did this and wrote this and this and this. We don't have that. Now, kids talk and parents make comments and things like that, but still we don't have anything substantial to act on, nor would we, because we chose to do this as an opportunity for a teachable moment for our seniors. Say that, you're going a little too far. Bring it back, make it right, let's move on. And let's embrace the fact that all children, including freshmen, are inclusive in our environment in the high school.
But there's one student felt coerced, basically, was kind of the argument, right?
I don't know if they felt coerced or they just felt they didn't have the power to be able to say no to an adult.
Not sure the difference.
Well, it wasn't an adult, it was actually another student.
Yeah.
That was saying we need to go out. So, you know, I get that point though, you know, peer pressure and things like that, the way it is. So in my conversation with Mr. Hutchins, it was, in the future, when we do something like this as a team building or a class building experience, a teachable moment, we have to be very, very clear in our announcement, officially coming from you to the senior class or whatever group you're talking about, this is voluntary, but I would like those that feel that they can, to step out and help us clean this up. But that message was not clearly given.
Does that parent feel his concerns have been addressed, or is that still an open
Mostly
question?
along the way, I think, but I'm not sure. I mean, it's what we've done. One should be aware of it. I understand that the nuances of FOIA have changed in my mind a little bit, and certainly have changed with my leadership.
Wait till your teachers get body cams like the sheriff.
Pardon?
Wait till your teachers get body cams like the sheriff deputies were.
Oh, don't go down that path.
Well, I don't even.
Why would you say that?
That was why. That's why I came to work with Bill. I didn't want to deal with body cams. So.
Now we're, my, and really when you, and I really do think that for our high school administrators to experience the climate that they were able to accomplish with their students last year, and have only truly one documented fight between friends that made up afterwards. I think that's really outstanding for 850 kids in a high school.
Absolutely.
So I think we're moving in the right direction, and with encouragement and support from us and from me to our building administrators, they'll continue to improve that, and you'll see some evidence of that as we go along.
And did we make this clear to the juniors too, not just the seniors, so that next year?
They learn.
Yeah.
Teachable mode for all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to action items, financial, A, award bids for snow removal services, and B, award project bids for renovations to the Marshall High School Ag Science Classroom. Could you read the background?
Sure. Board Policy 6320 requires that any single item costing more than $5,000 be board approved. 4 contractors were invited to bid, with bids due by September 25, 2017. 2 contractors responded. The board is being asked to consider awarding snow removal services as recommended by the Director of Business Operations. Item B, under award project, do you want to take them individually or together?
Together is fine.
Okay. Item B is award project bids for renovations to Marshall High School Ag Science Classroom. A bid opening was conducted on Tuesday, September 19th for work to be completed to the Ag Science Classroom at Marshall High School. CSM Group has presented the least costly response of bids for project. The award recommendations are now being presented to the board for consideration. It's my recommendation that these action items be approved as presented. And after you make motion and move it forward, CSM is willing to step up and talk about the project.
Have a motion?
Move to approve items A and B.
Support.
Okay, we'll move to discussion.
Todd?
Todd's back.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming.
All right. Couple of quick notes. So in regards to the ag science project, we had 14 bids for about 6 packages. So we had pretty good coverage there. The abatement work that needed to be done, there was some floor tile and some insulation blanket. That was previously contracted based on the cost of that under the thresholds through the district, and that work was actually completed last weekend. We had that done on off hours work, and then we have air monitoring done to get it clear so that we know everything's good for school to be in session. This project will get started here in the next couple weeks. Probably the longest lead item is casework. It's quite a bit of casework in that project, and the plan would be to have that completed for after spring break, so it can be used starting right after spring break. Any questions in regards to that? I give you a quick update on Caldwell. I don't know if I can beat Rich's Facebook post. Video's a little grainy, but anyway, there you go.
Thank you.
I think we've been getting a good response to our brick pile, and we did take a video of the cornerstone, but did not find a time capsule behind it, unfortunately, so there was no time capsule behind there, but we did take a video just to because it was gonna be exciting if there was. And the schedule of that was to be able to have the demolition completed by mid-October, and we should be done the 18th or 20th. The plan was to be able to then make sure that we had the seating and the grading and all that done by early November, trying to make sure we're catching the right weather. So should be on schedule for that, maybe even a little bit ahead of schedule. The abatement did take us a little bit longer, but the demolition has taken us a little shorter time. So we did find, I think, one area of extra abatement that was hidden under some soffit or whatever, but that was all taken care of. So, any questions about Caldwell?
Well, Todd, I do have a question about the ag science,
Sure.
on the time frame.
Mhm.
Originally, in our first planning process, we were hoping to have that done in time for first and second semester. What's causing that to go into the spring break?
No, it'll be done at, did I say spring? Christmas, sorry. Christmas break. So, yeah, the long lead item is casework. Sorry if I said, I meant to say
Did you
Christmas
notice
break.
my- Did you notice my ears turned red?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I even have it right here.
Becky was
So,
texting somebody to make sure.
complete by Christmas
Yeah, I
break.
was checking
So,
that too.
sorry about that.
All right,
Must be I was thinking about when I get a vacation.
okay, I'm with you.
So, yes, the,
Where's this classroom gonna be?
Right across from, well, down the hallway where the integrated applied arts area is, the first area room where it used to be the, what do you call it, the studio for the cable.
right across from the
So it's-
maintenance shop.
It's right across from Kelly's old classroom.
So if you, first
Just
door, first two
outside.
doors on the right as you come down the
Industrial
hallway.
arts is on the left.
Is
This
that
on
like,
the right.
is that the same hallway that Annette worked in?
Yes,
So
Yeah.
it's just before you got to her
yeah, the
classroom
first
where
two,
she was.
first two doors.
Is that where the robotics people?
Oh, it's where the
Where?
table.
No, they're next, they're sharing a space now all the way to the end.
Oh, in the end.
Where the CAD lab is, they have
Oh,
a
okay.
section that's kind of, taken out for that, cause they use the CAD drawings all the time for engineering. This is the first two doors on the right,
As
and,
you're coming from the band.
and it's the
room.
first classroom access to the greenhouse down the hallway,
Mm.
which is a really good location, and, yeah, it's gonna be good for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, half of the room has a computer switch in it, which is tied to the phone system and really wasn't used but for storage. And then the other piece of it was the studio. So,
Is this sinking fund?
Pardon me?
Sinking fund?
Yep.
Any other questions for Todd?
Christmas break.
Christmas
break.
break.
Be clear with that. Sorry, Randy, didn't
Thank
mean
you,
to
Todd.
send you. Guess I'm not coming back.
Appreciate it.
And then Becky, you did the snowplow. Was there anything that we needed to go through on that, or we have the bids, but
Yeah, you have the bids. I asked 4 people, only 2 people, returned. The person that we're awarding to's done it for the past few years, so.
okay.
And the bid is gonna be, for 3 years, so the price is good for 3 years, which is good.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, we will start with Larry.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, we will now move to public comments. That was Mullen, right?
Next time.
Thanks, Ted. You good? Okay. Seeing none, we will go to board member comments for which no action may be taken at this meeting.
At Carrington, we're having a fall harvest literacy night on Thursday. If you're not going to Biscuit and want to join us, it's at 5:30
This Thursday?
Thursday.
Okay.
Hey, Richard, that might be something good to put out on Facebook, is those events coming up this
I
week.
think that I've shared that, or I think, or Carrie minute. You talking about the book night or the
I've
biscuit?
seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Biscuit at the high school and then the fall harvest.
Always sharing stuff. We had actually Larry and Carrie and myself were at the NAACP dinner in Albion on Saturday night, and Mr. Giles represented the school very nicely with the welcomed everybody, so.
You had a few other guests that were there from the school too?
We did, yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Good, very
So
good.
good turnout.
Appreciate that.
Anything else? So now we're gonna have a motion to go to executive session regarding attorney-client privilege.
So moved.
Support.
Start with Carrie.
Yes.
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 We stand here.